Hello everyone, time to start working on the internals to the motor. Here I'm installing the lower rail that keeps the oil ring in place since the wrist pin has to be moved so much due to the long stroke. Got everything laid out, getting ready to fit the wings here in a little bit. All of the rings are oversized to where there's no gap at all in them. So I'm going to have to file each one of them to fit. Here I'm using one of the old pistons, and I put one of the rings on the bottom rung so that I can use it to press the new rings in evenly. If they're not even, it'll give a false reading on the feeler gauge. This is the ring filer I'll be using. Does a pretty good job. It's a little fiddly. Got to keep the ring flat and try to keep the ends square. They make more expensive ones, but I hopefully won't be doing this again, so just the fact that I had it laying around to use it for the second time is kind of surprising. And I've done 3 of the holes already. Put a little piece of tape across the ones that were done. I'm fitting each one to each set of rings to each cylinder individually. And knowing how I get focused on grinding, I could easily use the wrong hole. So I put a little check mark on the ones that I've already done. And here I sat down to bench and starting to assemble the rings, getting the oil rings on here, and then the second ring, and then the top ring. I've already done 1 piston, and here shortly I'll get to the 3rd piston, and that's about the time I realized that I couldn't get the wrist pin out with the rings on. So tell them all back apart on the ones I've done. Now I'm going to assemble the pistons onto the rods, and then I'll put the rings on. Here I'm using some assembly lube, getting here on all the surfaces so that it won't have a dry startup and be good to go. It is possible to get the rod and piston assembly assembled incorrectly. I guess there's a 50-50 chance. So while I've got to speed it up, I'm actually taking my time and each time I get one done, I turned around and looked at the motor and checked the orientation of the piston and rod to make sure it was good. Going to put the cam assembly in before I start putting the pistons in. Makes it a little easier to get to. Also keeps any dirt from getting into the cam bearings that may happen. So lubing up the bump stick and get ready to install it. Now, time to start putting the pistons into the block. Here I'm taking some regular 30 weight non-detergent oil, oiling down the cylinder real good. One thing about having the 400 small block versus the 350 small block is the hole's big enough I can get my hand in there without it tearing up the sides of my hands from the sharp edges on the block. So that was nice. And now the piston's in, put the cap on the bottom and just snug it up. This is where that new little electric ratchet that I got from Harbor Freight has come in quite handy. So far I'm real pleased with that tool. Same process here on the next one and continue on down the line. Well, I got those 4 done, and I put 2 in on the other side, and sort of like the rear main seal, something didn't feel right. If you look on that leftmost set of rods, they have some side play, and the center 2 rod assemblies doesn't really have hardly any side play. And this was the same crank that came out of the broken motor, and that little shiny spot that I'm pointing to there is where one of the trunks of the main cap had hit the crank, and it hit it in a couple spots. I had filed them down kind of flush before I had the crank magnafluxed, but apparently it squished and moved the metal, and it has gotten now to where there is no side play, or hardly any. I think there's a thousandth, maybe 2, and there should be like 20 to 22 thousandths, somewhere like that. So they're too close, and I'm not sure exactly what my options are at this point. I've moved it around, and there is a place where it's looser, and then it gets to that area where the collision happened, and it gets tight again. So I think I've diagnosed the problem. I'm going to call my engine builder first part of the week, see if he has the ability to relieve that, maybe have the option of thinning down the side of that one rod a little bit. I can buy another crank. They're reasonably expensive, although they're getting hard to find. I've only found a couple of suppliers for it. But then again, I have to have the crank rebalanced, so there's expense there. So hopefully he'll have a solution that he's seen before that will work, and I don't have to throw this nice big piece of iron away. But won't know till at least Tuesday, what with Labor Day coming up. So that's the trials and tribulations. I am glad that I noticed it, because I'm pretty certain it would have destroyed the motor if I would put it together this way. And we'll just move on to one more thing. No motor explosions come without some pain. So thanks for watching. Once we find out what news we got, good or bad, we'll finish up the videos on the engine. Thanks for watching.